Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my manor, and as you can see, I got a brand new set of sprites now! Hooray! These sprites were drawn for me by the wonderful Tangled Colors on Twitter, and she has her own group known as Thornforge Studios on YouTube. Both of their links are in the description below. Now, as the title suggests, this is a rehash of an opinion I went over before. I usually make these when I feel like I haven't properly articulated my opinions, as well as taking input from the criticism. Notably, this was inspired by my Warhammer 40k video, my video about the hypocrisy of originality by critics, and complaints, legitimate complaints might I add, about fanfiction, fandom tourism, and gatekeeping, another perspective of the causes of such problems and the alternative solutions. Now, some people are probably going to be confused about what a fandom tourist is. A fandom tourist is someone who kind of comes to a franchise for the sightseeing, but at times will grumble and complain about things that are key to the franchise's identity, and often it comes off as a bunch of whining, grumbling, and complaining, and they can't seem to take the hint that maybe this thing isn't their cup of tea overall. Then, of course, there's gatekeeping, which is honestly quite a messy subject because of the pros and cons and the difficult determination of which cases are legit gatekeeping and which cases are petty. Speaking as someone who has been a fandom tourist, and quite honestly still kinda is, I want to give my perspective of why there's fan tourism when I believe gatekeeping goes too far and the alternative solution to all this. So let's start with those dang tourists. Now, of course, fandom tourists love to do is they love to complain about things they don't like about this thing, even though it's crucial to the thing's identity. However, the reason why they still stick around because there are qualities and things in that said property that they do like. For a personal example, I guess I am something of a tourist when it comes to Warhammer 40k. I love the idea of power-armored super soldiers, space elves, space demons, and space gods, among other things. However, I'm not a fan of the gray morality, the beliefs of the Imperium pre- and post-heresy, the former being secular humanism, and the latter being alt-right race mysticism with a Catholic aesthetic, both of which I feel conflict with my beliefs as a Catholic, nor am I a fan of the morals and beliefs of the Eldari and Tau, damn space commies. And the three factions that I like that are the closest thing to good ultimately fall flat in terms of morality. To me, it's like watching the men, elves, and dwarves of Middle-earth fight amongst each other and Sauron/Melkor gaining all the benefits.
I have everything and you have nothing!
But as far as to my knowledge and to the knowledge of other tourists, this is the only franchise that we know that has all these things that we like. And there's no other alternative. And before anyone gives me the absolute boomer take of, just go watch Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, bro. Okay, yeah, here's the thing. Everybody watches Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. And as for the current state of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, well...
My ass!
Another example I can go over is my experience with RWBY. I liked the characters and some of the concepts of RWBY, but I wasn't happy with Volume 3 onward. And many people thought I want everything to be all sunshine and rainbows and nothing ever bad happening, and I should just go watch RWBY Chibi, or what I wanted was 90% of shonen anime. Okay, what other Magitech science fantasy series has a dork knight and a kind, lonely Amazonian woman isolated by society, a brash sunshine himbo, and a moody ninja girl who's down on her luck, a quiet stoic warrior dude and his energetic, hyperactive girlfriend, a sassy, prissy rich girl, and a nerdy but kinda insecure cool dude who fight demonic mockeries of wildlife.
Oh, you don't actually know, do you?
And honest to God, it is so annoying when people do that, because it's quite clear that they don't have our best interests at heart. They just want us to be put in these neat little organized zones of sanctioned dissent for their own convenience, which then afterwards they tell us to shut up and be content with that, or else go watch a sitcom or rom-com.
They want you to fit into a neat little predetermined box.
Now, of course, there's the opposite extreme end of this spectrum, where tourists try to fundamentally change what made this franchise what it fundamentally is. And unfortunately, these idiots have gained corporate power and have gained control over franchises which they're slowly changing into the unrecognizable material. I mean, this was literally the plot of Wayne's World 1.
We own the show. Ah, bite me.
I'm bigger!
Hence, this is why gatekeeping has become necessary, which leads to my alternative solution. Why not we just take what we liked and what we wanted and make our own thing with it? But then I remember one of the reasons why that may be, because some people are going so far as to gatekeep concepts, creativity, and imagination. Let's say somebody like tidbits of Star Wars, like it's a space opera and has laser swords, but doesn't like the plot or some of the characters. So he takes what he likes and what he wants, combines it with other things, and makes his own space opera. Hell, he might take a few jabs at the inspiration. And then some jackass Star Wars fan comes along and says he's not allowed to do that either because that's stealing from Star Wars and being hostile and leeching off George Lucas's work. He reduces it to nothing more than its inspirations, the fact it was done out of dissatisfaction and distaste, and glosses over everything that's done with that, or outright ignore it. He calls it thinly veiled butthurt fan fiction and tells the guy to be more original and use something else. This has certainly been the case with Common America with the Common Core. After all, Common America was created after the creators were unhappy what was done with the concept of Captain Marvel. So they took the concept of Captain Marvel, combined it with the magical girl genre and various bits of anime and tokusatsu, and created the Common Core. Once it got enough attention, countless of Captain Marvel simps screeched at it for being a hentai porno Captain Marvel ripoff, written for a bunch of horny, angry white males who hated Captain Marvel and women in comics. I had the same experience on Tumblr where I expressed my ideas of what RWBY could have been instead and what I planned to do with it, both a RWBY AU and original works that take what I liked and what I wanted from RWBY and makes them into their own thing. One infamous RWBY stan, who I will keep anonymous, said I wasn't allowed to do that because it was out of dissatisfaction and distaste and I was leeching off Monty's work and I should just use something else. And what I plan to do and what I had in mind is nothing but pandering. And this guy was infamously known for going out of his way to stalk, harass, and have his follower minions dogpile on anyone he feels has offended RWBY. And this isn't even touching upon the incident on DeviantArt where he harassed someone into contemplating suicide, which thankfully the guy didn't go through with it, and acted like he did nothing wrong. All just because the dude made a passionate DeviantArt journal entry of how he didn't like Akira's death. And at the very least, it should have been held off until Volume 5. But I'm getting off topic here. In both cases, the message was abundantly clear. This is derivative because these people actively disagreed with the concept that I like and took it a direction that I didn't like for an audience who I also don't like. All while they'll hypocritically support people who do the exact same thing with the things that we like because they think they know better than we do of what's the end-all be-all of concepts. It's a Gnostic sentiment, really. We know what things are, we know what they can ever be, and what specific ways and genres, and you don't.
They believe they know, with a G, and you don't.
And when I expressed what I planned on doing with what I liked and what I wanted with Warhammer 40k, which is make my own thing with it, the response was far more chill. Most of the Warhammer 40k fandom's response was like, whatever, I guess that's cool, but it's not my cup of tea. Which is kind of funny and ironic when you think about it, because this is a franchise known for stuff like this.
Burn the heretics! Kill the mutants! Purge the unclean!
Yet are more willing to have civil discussions about this kind of stuff than the franchises that are all about trusting love. God, this poetry just writes itself. And there's something I noticed about the two extreme sides of this spectrum. These people don't like it when those who they deem to be the wrong people, the peons, take matters into their own hands, or at the very least unapologetically so, and in ways they do not approve of. Because these two extreme sides have the same mentality as I've stated before.
Their superiority, their pretense to expertise. All of it follows from this belief that they understand and you don't.
And because they truly understand things for what they really are and what they can ever be and in what specific ways, they are not bound by the rules like everyone else. They could just do whatever they want because everything they do aligns with objective reality, supposedly, while everyone else is too stupid and crazy to think for themselves, let alone feel for themselves, so they gotta follow all these rules and regulations. In fact, it reminds me of the Chronicles of Narnia, the magician's nephew, with the professor's Uncle Andrew Kettlery. Basically, imagine Doc Brown from Back to the Future if he was an occultist and an absolute douchebag. He believed that since he had hidden wisdom, he could break promises, not follow the rules like everyone else, he can use other people's values against them, and basically do whatever the hell he wants. Which he tries to play off as a high and lonely destiny, and I gotta cut myself from pleasures in order to enjoy these freedoms. But anyone and their mother could see that he's full of shit. And Jadis eventually calls him out on it by calling him a peddling magician. Even though Jadis is just as guilty of the same things, and even worse, because she basically ended her entire world just so that way her sister couldn't have it. But that's a perfect description for the people that I'm complaining about. They're peddling magicians.
They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds.
And just like Jadis and Uncle Andrew, both hate each other, but both are a blight upon everyone else. So I'm gonna make a very thorough response to each side. And I'm gonna start with big corporate entertainment, if they ever see this. You people have no excuse to not do the alternative solutions I have suggested. You have the money, you have the wealth, you have the power, you have the resources to do all this and withstand the bitching from the nasty little snobs. And some studios are doing that, and from what I've seen, they're doing just fine. So why aren't you doing that? When you take stuff from other things and use it as inspiration, you are more liberty to do whatever the hell you want. But if you're either going to do an adaptation or work that's within a franchise's universe, you better be ready to follow the rules. Because if you keep alienating the audience that you perceive the vocal toxic minority, despite all the evidence proving otherwise, you're just going to keep getting empty seats and plummeting stocks. Now this part is going to be directed at the petty gatekeepers who want exclusive power and dominion over certain ideas and concepts. Your gatekeeping is going way too far, and it's doing more harm than good and contributing to the very problem that you're complaining about.
I'm saying that your obsession with what is clean and unclean goes farther than God intended and does no good for anybody but yourself.
And I'm not saying I am Jesus or I am the Messiah. I'm just using that clip to make a point, because that's what you guys are being right now, Pharisees. I do not give a pingus of how objective and educated you are about these things. And I and other creatives are under little to no obligation to regulate our creativity and force ourselves to change our feelings and keep our mouths shut and follow your hypocritical little rules because you think you know better than everyone else. We are under little to no obligation to not take what we liked and what we wanted and not take jabs at the inspiration, especially when you support creatives who do the exact same things towards things you don't like and what we like. And by your own logic, which you love to use, such as it's not going to change canon or its trajectory, then why?
Oh, what?
Have this sense of obligation to come in and police everyone else and lecture how horrible we all are for liking things that you don't and creating and enjoying things that you don't like, while lecturing us about what you're doing right now. Because by your own logic, what we do is of ultimately no consequence to you. So I don't get it.
What? Why do you give a shit?
Because what you're actually doing is not giving us a fighting chance, kneecapping us, and giving those big entertainment companies an excuse to point and say, see, this is why we tamper around with pre-existing franchises and not make original works, because there's no pleasing these people. And just like those despicable people, what you do is at someone else's expense.
none of this costs you fucking anything.
Because doing all that will make you enemies in the long run, and it will hurt you gravely.
One of these days, it's gonna come back and it's gonna bite you on the ass.
Because when we finally make our own thing, and it gets an audience that might be possibly those disappointed fans of that franchise, those tourists that you spurned, and you come along to lecture them all to do your solo spiel of, oh, this epic is so uninteresting, it's all sunshine and rainbows, it has no real raised stakes and consequences and adversity or struggle or blah blah blah. You people should just go consume one of our approved alternatives. You'll end up pissing those people off. And I'm a Catholic. I'm told vengeance belongs to the Lord. But the other reality is some people aren't as graceful than others, and they may decide to give you a taste of your own medicine, and your little fancy schmancy literary jargon and gibberish isn't gonna protect you from that.
Told you so, told you so, told you so.
Because here's the thing. I don't know how many I speak for. I don't know how many are gonna resonate with my work. All I know is I'm not the only one who feels this way, or at the very least, people who, like you, their minds are kind of made up, but are still willing to be like, but still, what do you have to say? And if you're not part of that entourage, you don't need to be involved. And I'm sure I can hear you guys say, well, what if it's not as big as you think it is? What if you're wrong? Well, in the words of Dr. Vakeman in Ghostbusters,
if I'm wrong, nothing happens. We go to jail.
If I'm wrong, if any of my ilk are wrong, nothing happens. It's not like it'll be like this across the Spider-Verse where some giant reality hole is gonna rip through and it's gonna eat us all or something. And I really hate that smug canon event meme too. Yeah, that reimagined Ruby AU and whatever you plan to do with those ideas and concepts in your original works, well, you shouldn't do either of those things because it's trying to change the trajectory of a canon event. I mean, it's a canon event.
Shut the hell up!
Because I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. If you let us make what we want, it will draw away the potential tourists from what you like. I mean, maybe not entirely, but you'll still have less to deal with. So in other words, what we do ultimately benefits you guys. And with all of this taken into consideration, you could consider something that I like to call the benefit of the doubt. So you see our stuff on our feed and that just irritates you, just remember the benefit of the doubt. And as they would say in Ruby, just keep moving forward because you don't need to get involved. Because in your own words, it's not going to change canon nor its trajectory. It's not from you. Just disengage with it, find something else, and move on. Because that advice, along with the "it's a canon event, bro, you can't change it" meme, doesn't apply to us in this scenario.
That's you!
Oh boy, that really took a load off my chest. And I guess I kind of dragged on when it came to the latter, but I guess when it comes to big entertainment, everyone else and their mother has already said something about it. You know, critical drinker, retro blasting, razor fist, like, I don't need to preach to the choir at this point. This was more to explore what I feel like is another aspect that hasn't been gotten enough attention. I promise much more positive things in the future, and I can't wait to share more stuff with you and in this new format. It makes me feel like I'm part of the gang now. I mean, maybe not exactly part of the gang yet, but I feel like I'm getting there at least. And I hope you stick around and see what I got to offer. So, good night everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon.